Welcome to Hack on Hacks, episode 4. I am your resident hack. This episode is called Did Jewelry? It's actually this is the first one written by someone other than the big three, like I mentioned earlier, Paul W. Downs, Lucia Aniello, or Jen Statsky. This one's written by Joanna Callow and directed by another name I'm probably going to mess up. Please forgive me. I think it's Desiree Akhavan. Yeah, we're off to a good start here. It's either Desiree or Desiree Akhavan. It was released May 20th, 2021. And I should probably just start this whole thing over, but I'm not going to do that because this whole point of this is that I'm a hack. So here we go. So, episode 4, released May 20th, 2021. The Jewelry. DJ, The Jewelry. So this one's going to be a lot about DJ and her relationship with Deborah. And then the other half of it's going to be Marty and Deborah, that business sexual relationship I talked about in the previous episodes. So here we go. It opens up with some upbeat music. Deborah's pulling up in her Rolls Royce, and the first thing you notice is she looks like shit. She has like what looks like an extra like clown layer of makeup on her face. Not makeup, but like some like skin thing all over her face. She's wearing all sweats. She has her real hair. She just looks like a mess. And the next thing you see is what looks like paparazzi taking pictures of her looking like shit. So she's making her way in. She has her bag. She has her sweats on. And she's going into like a less than amazing apartment building. So we don't know where she's going yet or who she's going to see. But I think the point we're trying to make here is it's not the we need a wealth tax luxurious mansion that Deborah lives in. You know, Ava said that in episode 1 when she walked up. We need a wealth tax. She whispered to herself when she was wearing her Bernie 2020 bag and walking into Deborah's place for the first time. So we're going to get a contrast here. So she's walking up. Deborah knocks on the door. And look who answers. It's DJ. She's like, "Hi, Mommy." And all excited. Deborah's like, "Hi, DJ." Hacks. And the next thing you see is she's explaining her resort collection. So there's all these, like, I think they're funny, but they're meant to be serious pictures of DJ, Caitlin Olsen, doing the, like this with all the different jewelry all over her. And she has the stand with the different types of jewelry all over it. And she has her, what we'll learn later is her tumbler, because she self-tumbles. We'll learn that later. But okay, so she's explaining to Deborah, you know, all the intricacies of the color palettes that you're supposed to use for her resort collection. And Deborah seems so disinterested, and she's wiping off that shit that was on her face earlier, that makeup or whatever it was. And DJ's like, you can tell she's trying to make a real sales pitch to her mom, because as we learned earlier, she's trying to get on QVC, which Deborah has a bunch of products on, and she actually goes on there personally. So she's like, this is just wearable art, you know. DJ's trying to explain to her, it screams the jewelry, you know. And Deborah's like, it does, but in a way that's like, yeah, it does, but that doesn't impress me. I'm just trying to pacify my child past this pitch. And then she said, "Are you putting an apostrophe in that word?" And she's like, yeah, de jewelry. And see the way she said the de jewelry. And she's like, "Oh, mm-hmm." And she goes, "Oh, so what do you think?" All excited after she made the pitch. And this is a theme we've had before. Deborah and avoidance. She always tries to avoid the actual conversation and the real deep conversations she needs to have with the people she loves. So she says, so DJ says, "What do you think?" And Deborah says, "I think that juice is just sugar, and I think you know that." So, well, she holds up the orange juice and puts it back into her fridge. So she's trying to mother her instead of giving her the advice about her collection. She said, "I think it is absolutely you, honey." And DJ smiles like, "Okay, great. I'll send you the whole lookbook. It's a really big file, so you let me know if you need me to zip it." And she's like, "Oh, please zip it." As in like, please shut up. And she's like, "I'll zip it. No problem." And the hard copy's still being bound, and she threw a fit at Kinko's. I don't know if that's where they put a brand in the writing for Kinko's, but either way, the point of that is she threw a fit. It's not, don't worry about it. You like basically like you don't have to go defend me, mom, because I took care of myself. I'm self-sufficient. That's a theme in this episode. But that's not the reason for that is not revealed until later. But we'll learn that later. A little spoiler within a spoiler of an episode. Okay, this is going to be huge on QVC as well because they really need a young, fresh-faced designer. That's what DJ says. And so Deborah just keeps saying, "Sure, I'll talk to them." Just reluctantly nodding. And Caitlin Olsen is going to win the award for Best Supporting Actress. I can feel it. I should have said it when this started. Hacks was just recently nominated for 25 Emmys. I think the Emmys are in September. This is July 2026 right now that I'm recording this. So hopefully in the next couple months I get some more episodes in and I can announce that she did. And that's just a little side point. So she said with that, DJ goes, with Dad dying and everything, I could really use a win. And the way she says it is like she doesn't really care about the dad. She just wants the win and wants to be on QVC. And then we switch to back to Deborah's real life. She's getting on the private jet. Ava's taking a selfie. And then we get into like the business that we talked about with Marcus and Ava. And Marcus helping Ava rent out her place. He already found someone that wants to rent the place out. Thank you so much. But he had to take down a wall in the kitchen. So she's like, no, you can't. Oh, wow, it looks much better. And he's like, yeah, I know. So that kind of makes the point of ask for forgiveness, not permission. That's kind of how Marcus and Deborah operate because they're business people. So they have to go and get the money first and worry about the ramifications later. Within, obviously, ethics and acting appropriately. But now they're on the PJ. And the dog, the funny thing about that is the first thing you see in the scene is the two dogs, Deborah's two little dogs. I think they're corgis. I'm not a big knowing about the dog breeds, but they're going on the PJ, and Ava's like, you don't even have to go through security, amazing, acting like a peasant, and she's like, this is nice. And then the best joke of the episode probably, just a quick little, she's like, and Deborah's like, I know, Epstein estate sale, and then Ava's like, really? No. And she's like, no, stop acting like a hillbilly and sit down. And Ava's like, wow, this bitch. And she's like, all right, Barry, come on, trying to move the dog. And Deborah's like, oh, that's his seat. So obviously, the pecking order, Deborah puts Ava in her place. She didn't know, it's okay, baby boy. And while she's petting the dog, and she looks up at Ava like, you should have known better. So that relationship is still in its infancy, I'd say. And so then they get to like the whole point of the show is that they're supposed to be not writing partners, but they're writing together. Ava's supposed to help Deborah write. So she's trying to sell foot spas on QVC. And Ava starts going into her writing process. Okay, foot spa. Let's see. Feet, toes, pedicure. And Deborah's like, wow. It's like watching Picasso sing. She's like, you mean paint? No. So then Ava's like, oh, that was a put down. Like she realizes it. And then they just keep going. She's like, what about something about wiki feet? Like your Tootsies will look so good and you'll break wiki feet. And of course, Deborah doesn't know what wiki feet is, but this is a great insight into her character. It's about celebrity feet and men being horny for feet. So it's like Wikipedia for that. And Deborah's first question is, she's like, oh God, am I on it? And Marcus and Damien look over like, yes, just because they know she would be upset if she weren't on that. That's how much she's into her image and her celebrity. But this is a bit of a spoiler, but I'm not going to tell you why it's a spoiler, but just a little fun YouTube spoiler. She's also selling progesterone drink packets. So if you don't know what that is, and she has some fancy flavor, Tahitian grapefruit, but Ava doesn't know what they are. So Deborah explains progesterone is a female hormone that allows women to get pregnant and stay looking young. And what she gives them, it helps menopause and postmenopausal when you're hair turns gray, your body stops metabolizing fat, your skin and nails start to crack like old clay. And she says it's pretty much like Mother Nature telling you to move to the back of the cave. But her progesterone supplement that replaces some of that progesterone, the body stopped producing. So you can stay hot and young until I was going to think she says drop. Maybe that's what the writer wanted to convey there, or hint at. But it's until you go off of it, of course, and then who knows what happens. And she says, which most people do, because sustained use does sort of raise the risk of ovarian and breast cancer. And Abe was like, and she's like, anyway, got jokes for that? And Ava was just dumbfounded, and she's like, I'm still learning a lot about this stuff, so I'm going to need a minute. And she's like, okay, take your minute. So she's like, deep sigh. This ruined my first PJ. Just Ava still being a child, still being, consumed with how difficult her life has been, and she can't even enjoy a private jet now because it was ruined by this progesterone thing. So then the next scene is we go to QVC, and it's like a QVC bomb drop in a positive way for Ava. She makes a lot of progress in this little scene. So they're talking about the foot spa, and she says, I got it. The woman helping Deborah on air is like, I got a lot of emails about this product, and she's like, and ladies, if you want to break wiki feet, got to order one of my foot spas. And Ava looks at the disinterested guy looking down at his phone, the producer just looking down at his phone with the headset on, and Ava looks at him and goes, I pitched that. So that's the beginning of what gets me all teary-eyed at the end of every one of these podcasts, is that maybe there is something there. Maybe she can help her. Maybe she actually is funny. Maybe she actually is a good writer. But we just think she's a spoiled kid at this point. So then they go on to the next product, and we're back off the PJ. So that part of the day is done. And now they're back at Deborah's house, her mansion, and it gets into Ava's politics. And so Deborah basically says, why can't you just pick a gender already? Because we remember the scene where she talked about being bi, where she gave her that whole speech. It's a little graphic, but I did it in episode 1. And the point of that speech was she looks at Deborah and goes, so anyway, I'm bi. Like a mic drop moment. And Deborah just made a Rachel Maddow's mechanic joke out of it. But now we learn that Deborah is offending Ava by calling her basically monosexist, which was something I didn't know until the show, but I picked up in context that monosexist is basically when she says, pick a gender, that's Deborah. When Deborah says that to Ava, she's being monosexist. And she's like, monosexist? She's like, there you go. That's a great code word for it. And then we enter the main conflict of the episode, which is DJ, Deborah, and the QVC. So she walks in all excited. DJ does, when is QVC going to bring me in? Did you talk to them? And, DJ just blows off Ava like she's not sitting there. And Deborah just has her face down trying to do work. And she's like, I'm working, DJ. Can't you see I'm working? And she's like, DJ's like, you're also lying to me. So she's not stupid, her mom is Deborah Vance, this legendary comedian, and we learned also businesswoman. So DJ can't be a complete moron. There has to be a little more to her story that we're going to learn throughout this episode. So Deborah goes, you're right. I was trying to protect you, but you keep pushing me. She said, I didn't mention the jewelry because it's not good enough. It looks like junk from a mall kiosk. And in that moment, you can see Caitlin Olsen's a great actress. I don't know how she prefers to be called, but she's great at acting. And she does this subtle thing with her purse, and she's like, okay. But you can tell, her eyes got a little teary-eyed, like that was a deep cut. And she's like, you think it's junk. You're insane. And Deborah's whole point is just make it better. And don't give up just because I'm pushing you, like you did with your essential oils. And this is actually maybe one of my more preferred jokes than the PJ joke. She's like, losing your protracted legal battle isn't giving up. And I never once said that my oils would cure all types of autism. And Deborah's eyes are like, what? And she's like, oh, so TJ's like, so that means you're not going to come to the trade show this afternoon? And then we learn about the other half of this episode when she says, I told you, I'm going to Marty's daughter's bat mitzvah. So a lot's going to go down at that bat mitzvah. And for those of you who don't know what a bat mitzvah is, there's a bar and a bat mitzvah. Bar is for boys, bat is for girls. And it's when, I think 13, when you're around 13, you have a party, celebrate yourself becoming a Jewish adult. And then she has a show after that. So then we get to the heart of the beef that they have. DJ's like, well, I guess it's nice you can at least be there for someone's kid, right? Because God forbid you do one effing thing for me. I don't know about cursing, or I'm not even close to being monetized, but I've said worse on previous podcasts, but let's see if that effing makes a difference. And then we get a little bit more on that spoiler within a spoiler that I talked about earlier this episode. She's like, and Deborah says to DJ, you have no idea how much I do for you. And then Ava's about ready to leave. And Deborah's like, I'm calling it early anyway. And then she delivers the knockout punch. Do yourself a favor this afternoon and go and get your tubes tied. And DJ has that face again, like, I'm about to cry, but I'm going to hold tough for it. She does that with her lip. And then Ava offers to go to the show with DJ if she wanted someone there. And DJ's like, you don't have to do that just because you feel sorry for me. And then she explains, actually, I just think it would really piss her off if I went with you. So, and then she's like, DJ's like, you effing rule. Let's do it. And she's like, I call shotgun. And Ava's like, I guess I'll drive. I guess that means I'm driving. So because she's not driving, maybe we'll see what happens later in terms of people who don't drive and what happens then. So then it cuts to the bar mitzvah. All the kids on their phones, of course, around those little stand-up tables outside. And we see Marty's mansion in his humongous backyard. He's showing a colleague his golf swing. And Deborah walks in. Shalom. And Marty, this is the business sexual, is about to pick up. So Marty looks her up and down. You look fabulous. Deborah's like, thank you. And, he says hi to Marcus. Marcus leaves to go get a drink. And so from the beef we saw from the first episode, we learned Marty is mad at her, and they've been retaliating back and forth. Deborah's obviously mad at him too. So in this meeting, he goes, so you're not, when they first see each other, he's like, so you're not still mad at me? She's like, oh, I just really love Allie. That's why I got her this. So it's not just, she just loves his daughter. She's going to get him something. She's going to try to make it into a little transaction. It's a limited edition Birkin that she wanted. I'm not a bag person, but I think it's a fancy bag, costs a lot of money. And he's like, oh, that's very generous. And then it's not just the purse, it's what comes with it. And this is a letter from the headmaster at St. Xavier's. So you let me keep my dates. Allie gets to go to school with all her little friends. And he switches to that businessman voice. I'm not changing my mind. And he looks at her like, yeah, I'm not changing my mind. He's like, oh, but you must have gone through some trouble because if I remember correctly, DJ drove her Jeep through the gym at St. Xavier's her junior year. I love this with the writing. It was a Range Rover through the rare book room. That alliteration and just the way that flows is great. And I fully refunded the rebuild. Still friends, right? Oh, the best of. And that's their little beef is over, the little back and forth. But then the director did an amazing job on this one. They show Marty in the background and Deborah walking away. They focus on Deborah's face like, damn it, that was my chance. That's why I came to this thing in the first place. So now it's like all wasted time. We have a quick little meetup with Marcus and Marty's ex-wife. She has a very funny 10 seconds. She's like, Marcus, I always drink too much when you're around. She walks up to the bar and says this. And then she's like, double Tito's, she said double vodka soda. And it was like pulling teeth to get the event done. And Marty nickel and dimed it the entire time. Oh, is he nickel and diming Deborah? Of course he is. So that's kind of, had to throw that in there. But they had to fight to have the lamb chops as a passed hors d'oeuvre. Can you believe that? This is a bat mitzvah. And it's like, it's a commentary on the wealthy, I think, is what I would say. And we learned that Marty has a new girlfriend. Her name's Ivy. Marty says she's an old soul. And they cut to her. She looks like this hot young woman. So Marcus's line, lucky, Marty keeps finding old souls in 26-year-old bodies. Of course, she laughs, touches his arm, and now we're at the Vegas Jewelry Expo. So, Did Jewelry, D''Jlwry, if I'm right. Let me just double check that. I don't want to mess this up. So, they go to the convention center, Las Vegas Jewelry Expo, D''Jlry, Did Jewelry. So, Ava's trying to help. She's building up their little booth at the expo. And we learned that DJ's a building manager. Managing a building's a nightmare. And Ava's like, wait, you're a building manager? And she's obviously like taken aback by that. And she, DJ says, I manage the building I live in exchange for free rent. And what did you think? I was just some hot rich kid with, living off her parents' money. He was like, kind of. So then we start to realize the purpose of the writing in this episode. It's so that those two can bond, Ava and DJ. First, she shows her that she self-tumbles. She tumbles the rocks herself for her jewelry. Nobody else here self-tumbles. And she just put the rocks in a machine, press the button, and like 10 seconds later, they're done. So that shows you about her work ethic and what she thinks gets you, what constitutes hard work. But her earring story, that's the next thing DJ goes into. She wants to, have Ava be the model for the jewelry at the Vegas Expo. He didn't think it through what her earring options were, because Ava's all over the place with her earring choices. She puts this humongous, ugly thing on her ears. It looks like it drags her earlobes down. It's so heavy, and she's like, oh shit. I mean, those look hot on you. And if I could freeze frame and look at it, it's literally like her ear is this big and the earring is like that down her ear. She's like, you can be my model. Check it out. What do you think? She's like, they are substantial. She's like, yeah, right? I mean, they look like a key to another dimension. So much cooler than something from a mall kiosk. So then they're about to get into the bonding. I don't know if it's trauma bonding, but it's definitely like mommy issues bonding. And we haven't learned much about Ava's family or Ava's parents or Ava's mother. But we learned about DJ that she spent thousands of years, that must have been what it felt like for her, thousands of hours in therapy trying to process how to deal with Deborah. She calls her Deborah, not her mom. And she's like, it's good you're doing the work. Your mom once told me that therapy is for bulimics and pedophiles. And DJ finishes her sentence, because she's heard that a million times before. And it's venting. It really is venting, I guess is the better word. She's like, Ava's like, God, it's so nice to be able to vent about her to someone. She's like, I am so down. And then we learn a little more about DJ. She's always going to be a work in progress, she says. She's able to practice radical acceptance. I learned this term from some Netflix documentary. I love that term. Jonah Hill did a documentary on Netflix about mental health. It was really good. I'm forgetting what it's called right now, but if you can take those hints and piece them together and look it up, please. It's a one-word title about a therapist, an aging therapist, and his methods. I think it's something with an S. Anyway, radical acceptance. So I can just radically accept that my mom is a no, she doesn't say that. She says the C word. That word is, I had an Australian roommate when I was in school back in the day, and he loved that word, the C word. It seems like in other cultures like Australia, maybe England, they use that word casually, very casually, but she says it here, and it's Ava loves it. She just laughs. And DJ's like, I wasn't joking. But she's like, I could see why you laugh. And so she's trying to make more sales. And then we realize we're cutting to the next scene. We're going into the wine cellar with Marty and Deborah. Here comes some business sexual tension. So he has this, of course, massive wine cellar in his basement or wherever it is. And he's taking down a bottle of wine so they can open and drink. And he's like, she goes, open it. He goes, yes, ma'am. And she's like, your collection has really grown since the last time I was down here. Well, they say if you collect, it's not a problem. She's like, well, the first step is admitting you have a problem. So he opens it, and they're off to the races. Let's drink to your daughter, becoming a woman. She's a good kid. They're going back and forth. He's like, for the most part. And she's like, oh, well, I know where she gets her naughtiness from while she's stirring the wine. And Marty's like, her mother. She's like, nice try. And they start doing the what's new with you? And she launches right into lately I've been trying to wrestle my stage time back from a handsome tyrant. He's like, oh, come on, I talk business all day. You're the one person I'd love to talk about anything else with. Well, what does that tell you? Business, sexual, like I've been saying. So let's see where this flirting goes. She's like, okay, let's talk about something else, Cheers. And they start doing the wine thing. I'm getting notes of or hints of whatever they say. I'm not a wine person. I'm getting plum and licorice. And he's like, honestly, I'm getting mint. I forgot to spit on my gum. Just a couple of old funny people having a laugh. Maybe it'll be better now. They're having like a genuine human to human moment, not business person to business person conversational beef. So then we get into back to the jewelry expo, and Ava's like, my mom's gonna freak out when she learns that I lost my deal. And also her mom's not a conspiracy theorist, but I think that's just because her internet's too slow. So that says a lot about what her mom's like, what her mom's life is like, what her mom does every day. And DJ's like, God, moms are the worst. I'm so sorry you have to deal with yours and mine now. And then the part that got me really emotional at the end of one of the last podcasts when she was trying to reel in that fish, if you remember, when Deborah has that artificial pond and Ava's watching how Deborah almost became the first female to host late night, and she had her big fish and she reeled it all in, and she's holding the fish. She's like, okay, I know, and she had to let that big fish go. So that's kind of a metaphor for her having to let go of the big late night show, I'd say. I didn't mention that at the end of that podcast. I was kicking myself for it, so squeezing it in now. Anyway, back to episode 4. She's like, it's a lot, just, trauma bonding or vent bonding. And then Ava looks at DJ and she's like, it is crazy. She was almost the first woman to host a late night show. And DJ's like, yeah, and maybe if she hadn't acted like a frickin' pyro, they would have picked it up. Remember Pyre Pizza? I did a whole rant on that, so good on me. Anyway, she's, Ava gives a little hint, a little spoiler maybe. Sounds like it was a dramatic time. Do with that what you will. We'll learn later. It's always a dramatic time with her. And then I like this line. Did you know my aunt slash stepmom has been trying to talk to her for the last 40 years? That woman doesn't let anything go. And then she gets into DJ talks, starts talking about her therapy. She's always telling me, where her trauma started when Deborah dragged her out on the road with her when she was a kid. She just wanted to be a kid and go to school and all that, be normal. But instead, she was 13 years old doing her first line of coke in the Chuckle Hut at Kalamazoo. And Ava's like, was it at least good coke? So they're starting to have a real bond. So for a 13-year-old, sure, yeah. And they're kind of like the same way that Marty and Deborah were sharing a laugh, like an authentic one. This is where DJ and Ava share an authentic laugh. And then it almost gets serious. You know, this is what I said earlier, one of the themes of the show. It gets to like that point, just to that point of being at like a dramedy. And then it just goes right back to the comedy. So she says, I'm not dumb. Like, I know I've got to own my actions, but she's the reason I've been in recovery for 20 years. So 20 years, we learned that about DJ. She's been in recovery for 20 years. And do you ever think she once would come to a meeting with her? So that's a no. But, you know, will people change? Can people change? Is that a major theme of the show? Probably can't see my eyebrows. Okay, there we go. Here we go. No, not one. She didn't go to. Getting very serious. She's starting to do like, I'm going to cry. She's like, whatever. And then Ava's like about to say something really serious, and they're about to bond, but she is Deborah Vance's son. Oh, son? She is Deborah Vance's daughter. She's like, can you like face forward with those or something? Talking about the earrings. She's like, I feel like you're not getting any earring attention. And then right back to the wine cellar with Marty and Deborah. So he's about to get another bottle of wine, so they're implying they already had one. You know, don't you have to go, and Deborah's like, don't you have to go step on a glass or whatever? That's a joke about Judaism. You step on a glass at a wedding, not at a bar or bat mitzvah. And he's like, it's more fun down here. Whoa, should we be bad and open the Margot? And she's like, oh, you're naughty. And the way he like, I can't even do it. He does some little like, try to be sexy lip bite. And she's like, told you where she got it from. And like the nastiness or the naughtiness. And he makes a joke like, she told me if I didn't get her an iPhone, she was going to join Antifa. And Deborah bursts out laughing. And they're back into their bonding, just not even business sexual. This is just sexual at this time. So, and Deborah's like, you know, you got to be bold and have a personality. Talking about his daughter. And she's like, of course, what do I know about parenting? So those are the two things happening throughout this episode. TJ is bonding with Ava about their mothers. Marty and Deborah are bonding about parenting. So she's like, what do I know about parenting? He's like, you did the best you could. And she gives him this, like, thanks, like, I truly appreciate it sort of look. And right when it's they're trying to open the bottle, they have that movie moment where they look at each other lustfully. And then, of course, the 26-year-old, you know, the old soul in the 26-year-old body comes down, and she's like, baby, I've been looking all over for you. And she's, like, oblivious to what's going on. She's like, yeah, we'll be right up. You know, and then Deborah makes a goofy face, like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to open this thing up. I'm so silly. Oh, I'm such a dumb old blonde broad. Oh, I don't figure it out. And then, you know, then the 26-year-old leaves, and she's like, Deborah's like, I guess we should go. And it wasn't opened yet, but Marty's like, well, I can't make the noise. Well, it's open now. We got to drink it. One glass. And then they stumble out wasted in Marty's backyard. And they look great together. And you see a photographer saying, oh, let's get a picture of the beautiful couple. And Deborah gets ready to put her arm around him and take a picture. And Marty's like, oh, no, this is my girl. And he's like, Ivy? And he calls her over. And then he does his, like, all his little, you know, whatever you want to call it, hunky poses. All right, let's get a serious one now, you know, like he knows what the moment is. And so that's that scene. And now we're back into cutting into the Vegas convention for jewelry. And they're having a conversation about belly rings. She's like, no, and DJ's explaining, no, they're always in style because they have ethnic roots. And he was like, huh. And then DJ recognizes this very important buyer from Neiman Marcus. And she starts to get nervous. Her pits are going and her mouth is getting dry. She goes, how's my breath? And before Ava can even respond, you see the child and DJ. She's like, my stuff's not even good enough. Shit. And Ava's like, you know what? I'm going to make a boss move right here. And we start to learn that maybe Ava has more boss in her than employee. She's like, what are you doing? And she's like, Ava sees the woman. She runs into her. She goes, oh, hey. And the woman's like, what? Do I know you? She's like, didn't I meet you at Irene Neuwirth's birthday party? She's like, Blanche from Just One Eye? You're from Just One Eye, the woman says. I love that store. I didn't know they had a buyer. Well, yeah, I'm actually buying a ton of stuff right now. And then they show DJ, a.k.a. Caitlin Olsen, and she's like, I self-tumble. And the woman's like, cool. Can I take your lookbook? Yes. And she's so happy that she got that done. And she's like, Ava continues to lie. Hey, if you're ever in LA, check out our store. Our offices are upstairs. And then the woman says, good to see you. You too. That fake LA stuff, like 10 seconds, she acted like she knew she didn't know her, but Ava convinced her in like half a minute that she knew her. Good to see you. That classic good to see you stuff. But anyway, so Ava's like, I follow Busy Phillips on Instagram. She's constantly posting about jewelry people. Oh, thank God. Watching thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of those videos finally paid off, or of those stories. And then DJ goes right into, okay, bitch, time to celebrate, because you earned it. She's like, let's blow this shit. I've got the perfect bar for us to go to. And it was like, selfishly thinking, oh my God, I would love that. But then she comes right back to earth. Oh, wait, aren't you in recovery? And then DJ goes, just for powder and pills, babe. Liquid's on the menu. And now we're back to the bar mitzvah. So let's see what happens with the next scene when they flash back to DJ and Ava. But then you see Marcus trying to make a business move. So he walks up to Marty, and Marty offers him a cigarette, and Marcus is like, no, I just bleached my teeth this morning. So the smaller theater in the casino, why don't you give it to Deborah for Fridays and Saturdays? And he's like, you two are relentless. I've already cleared it with the production guys, Marcus says. You can move the set back easily on Sunday. You can double the income those nights. She doesn't feel slighted. Everybody wins. He's like, all right, interesting. Let's connect next week. That's his way of saying, go F yourself in business sense, in the business language. And then Marty leans over to some random guy. Showbiz people, am I right? In the background is a massive field of his winery, his wine backyard, is what I think it is. And then we're right back to Ava and Deborah, but they're at the bar. They're throwing axes. And she's like, it feels good, doesn't it? I'm telling you, for people with mommy issues, this place is essential. So Deborah gets a work call. Not Deborah, DJ gets a work call. And her friends are like, get some throwing stars on your way back, So we get to learn a little bit about her friends, DJ's friends. And Ava's like, I'll want your drink. And DJ's like, oh, it's whatever. So let's talk for a second about this business call. Is the business call going to be about her being a landlord, having an issue with the tenant? Or is it something else? Dun, dun, dun. We'll find out soon. So the friends just go, how old are you? To Ava. And then we cut back to what I think is the most important scene in this whole entire episode, because it sets up something that's going to be a factor down the line and down this season. So Ivy, Marty's 26-year-old girlfriend, sees Deborah. She can't help herself but to stop and say, it's so awesome to meet you. I'm a fan. I feel like I've known you my whole life. And Deborah's like, oh, thank you. And she looks over, and they both look over at the art. Do you like it? And she's like, yes, actually, I do. You got to remember, she's been having a little bit of wine. She's hanging out. And she's like, there's so many kids running around. I hope Marty has insurance. And she's like, well, the corporation does. Everything's through the corp. And light bulb. Deborah has a light bulb moment. They show that for a split second, that director. Desiree, well done. And Deborah's like, it's a beautiful piece. But you know what? I saw a sculpture in the hall. Was that you too? And she's like, guilty. Oh, what a funny word to use. We'll see what happens later. I actually redid the whole place myself. And she's like, I knew it. I effing love art. And she's like, I effing love art too. It looks so much better. And she's like, Deborah's like, I'm thinking about doing some redecorating myself. Would you mind terribly if I just, took a couple pictures for inspiration? And she's all flattered, and Deborah takes a picture, And she's like, and then the next thing Deborah asks for is a tour. And Ivy's like, I don't know. Marty doesn't want guests in certain areas of the house. And she's like, oh gosh, I would have loved to see more of your work. But I guess Marty's the boss. You know, she's manipulating this poor kid. She's like, I can probably show you around just a little bit. She's like, oh great, but you can't tell Marty. Oh. And then she's like that. And then they started this video montage of all the different art pieces. And Deborah says, would you mind getting a picture with me in it, you know, for scale? That'll come into play later. And so she's taking all these pictures. She takes she kisses the headpiece art. She's later on in the bed with the picture. She's doing all the different funny poses. She's on top of the car. And the woman, Ivy's like, fun. And Deborah, the next thing Deborah does is flick off the camera. And she's like on her way out. Deborah's on her way out with Marcus. And Deborah goes, call Tim Gurley. I have some assets that I want him to appraise. What does that mean? We don't know just yet. And then she bumps into Marty. Marty, sweetie, we're going to have to get together for drinks soon. And he's like, great. I'll have Phyllis set. Is it going to be just a friendly sexual tension meeting, or is it going to be something else? We'll see. Great. I'll have Phyllis set. Great. And she looks at the art and goes, I don't like that. Kind of reminds you of when she said there was a cockroach in her salad and he has to comp everyone. Well, we'll see what happens with that little appraisal. And then it goes right back to DJ's friends, and they're having this insanely dumb conversation about Tobey Maguire coming out of a Coffee Bean. I guess Coffee Bean is like the famous LA coffee shop. I know Travis Scott did a song called Coffee Bean. That's about all I know about it. So anyway, he was wearing one of those leg boots when he left the Coffee Bean. So she asked, because she knows Ava's from LA, she asked her, do you think he was wearing that for a role, or do you think he was injured? Like, does he ski? And Ava's like, I don't know if Tobey Maguire skis. And then, of course, you see her Bernie bag in the background. The director did a good job including that. So her political views are always on the table. I don't know if that's by design, but that's how I'm reading it. So she goes, DJ's been gone a while, huh? I guess managing an apartment building is actually a lot of work. Here we go. The friends look like one's stirring her drink, like chuckling, like, that's not what she means. You know, and Ava's like, what? What am I missing? She's like, that's not what she means by work. She sells photos, honey. She hires a photographer to take photos of Deborah, and then she sells them to like TMZ or whatever. So that's what was happening in the beginning of the episode. It was a photo op, so DJ could make money off of her famous mother looking like shit coming into her apartment building. So when when DJ left for that business call, it was probably TMZ on the phone and her confirming the article and giving them the green light to run it and getting her money. And then the friends are like, yeah, she makes hella cash. She makes like a lot more if Deborah looks like shit. And then Ava's like, that's so fucked. And just to see what type of friends DJ has, the friends go, hey, you're in the house all the time. You should do it too. I bet you could sell like her medical records or her diary or whatever. And then the other friend's like, her underwear. And then DJ walks in, you know, I got the next round, so finish up. And she starts chugging. She goes, time me. She starts chugging. She even chugs the lime. She spits it out. And she's like, what'd you get? And it was like, oh, I didn't time. And she's like, okay, to her friend, give me yours. And she's like, ready, go. She starts chugging. Quick cut to the Palmetto back into Vegas. And Deborah's getting ready for her show. So Ava's all serious. She looks like she's going to drop a truth bomb on Deborah. So she's like, hey, can I talk to you? And Deborah's like, yeah. And we think this is going to be such a major moment in the relationship between the two of them. Like, she's truth-telling. And she's like, you know, she's waffling about what she'll tell her. And she's like, maybe I'll mess you up. Deborah's like, you can't mess me up. What is it? She's like, okay, I'm going to tell you this, but please don't ask me how I know. But someone I know is selling pictures of you to TMZ. I don't know if you can stop it. I just thought I should tell you, sort of thing. And Deborah very just casually is like, all right, thank you. And Ava's like, you're just going to let it go? You're not going to ask me who it is? And the look Jean Smart, a.k.a. Deborah Vance, gives Ava in this moment is like a knowing look. Like, come on, Ava, you know that I know what's going on. Ava, you're smart enough to realize what's going on here. And Ava's like, oh, you let her. Makes her feel self-sufficient. That's what Deborah said. So she does care about her. She does. It's kind of like a callback to the line earlier, like, you don't know how much I do for you, DJ. That's what she does. She makes herself look awful and shows up at her apartment building basically just so she can afford to live and pay rent. And Deborah's like, I have to get dressed. And Ava leaves, And then there's this beautiful, like, split shot of Ava coming out of one door and Deborah and her getting her wardrobe ready. And she looks over at Ava like this, like, knowing look of like, oh, she actually cares and she tried to help me. And then another bit of a little spoiler, then we'll see why it's a spoiler, but then the next cut is to the fake Eiffel Tower in Vegas lighting up and Paris in the background and all the different places, the flamingo, and Ava's walking across that walkway, and she looks at her phone and she sees the TMZ article. Deborah Vance, a cry for help, ... She left the house like that? And it's all the different pictures of her in the sweats and her looking like shit. And Ava looks really, like, distraught and upset. So what she decides to do is she decides to call her mom. So she's going to check in and maybe tell her what's really going on in her life. And the second her mom answers, she's whispering. And she's like, sorry, is it too late? She's like, no, I'm just being quiet because your father finally fell asleep. We learned earlier in the episode where she was talking to the antique dealer that her father had a stroke, and the mother's at home taking care of Ava's mom's at home taking care of her father, and she's like, hopefully he sleeps through the night so I can get some rest. And she's like, Ava's like, oh, I'm sorry. And the mom's like, how's your new place? She's like, it's good. And then she finally tells her, I'm not actually there right now. I've actually been living in Las Vegas. And the mom does the classic mom that doesn't know, like, what's going on in her kid's life. She just makes all the crazy wrong assumptions. Vegas? Are you gambling? Like, of course, they just connect the most stereotypical thing and problem with the place. So, Vegas, gambling. She's like, no, I lost my deal. And she's like, you lost your deal? But you just bought the place in L.A. And she's like, Ava's like, I know, that's why I got another job. So instantly you see the reason why each one of these, DJ and Ava's mothers stress them out. They're for different reasons though. And, Ava's like, that's why I got another job. That's why I'm trying to do this that I'm doing over here. And she starts yelling, the mom starts yelling. So obviously she didn't care too much about being quiet. Now she's yelling at Ava. She's like, that business is so unstable. How many times do I have to tell you? What's next? You're going to have to move home here and live with us. And then she's like, I don't have room for you here. So you think she's like a cold mom. But then, of course, she saves it and says, I guess we can put a cot in the kitchen. She's like, no, Mom, no cot in the kitchen. I'm not coming home. And she's like, no, Ava, it's okay. I know where the cot is. And then she gets into the specifics. It's next to the Christmas decorations. And she's like, it's fine. You'll be fine. I got to go. And then she just hangs up. And Ava's on the verge of crying. The soft music hits. And she just walks off. And you start to realize, everyone has their own problems. Different, relationship dynamics between the moms and the daughters. And Ava's sitting in her hotel room, having a glass of wine, and the phone rings. And here comes the end of episode magic. Who's it going to be? So she leans over in her sweats, and she picks up the phone, and who's it going to be? And it's Deborah. She's like, Deborah has her old lady glasses on. She's laying in her bed, no wig on, just ready for bed. She's like, I think they've been overcharging you for room service. So we start to realize a new relationship is forming here, possibly more mother-daughter than mentor-mentee or employer-employee. So she's like, I think they're overcharging you for room service. And this is a classic Seinfeld bit. I don't know if that's where Joanna got it from, but after Deborah's like, I think they've been overcharging you for room service. He was like, who is this? Because there's a Seinfeld episode, there are a bunch of them, but where George calls Jerry when he's in trouble. And he's like, Jerry, you gotta help me with this, blah, blah, blah. And Jerry's like, who is this? So that's kind of the tone that Ava's doing with that. And she's like, Deborah doesn't even address that part. She's like, she knew that Ava was making a joke. She's like, they have you ordering 3 chicken parms in one night? And she's like, Ava's like, what are you, the NSA? You're going through my room service bills? And she's like, well, of course, it's my money. I think they made a mistake. I think you're being overcharged. And Ava's like, wow, 3 chicken parms in one night? That's crazy. And she's like, but I did order them. And Deborah's like, what, are you entertaining? She's like, no, it was just me. But they're medium-sized, though, and I eat the leftovers for breakfast, so you're actually saving money. And she's like, for breakfast? Deborah's like, for breakfast? And Ava's like, I may have been high. So a little more flexibility in that relationship. And she's like, and then the next thing you realize is that she's watching SVU, Criminal Intent. And Deborah's like, what channel? So they both, because they're local, they're both in the same city. She's like, channel 55. And of course, Deborah can't help herself. She's like, oh, I've seen this one. This attorney turns out to be schizophrenic. And she's like, Deborah, I didn't write it. And then Deborah's like, I didn't write it. And she's like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, but you spoiled it. And Deborah's like, he's the biggest guest star on the episode. If his name comes before the opening credits, he did it. And she's like, Ava's like, no, now you've spoiled every single one of them. And I've heard that before about those shows. I don't really watch them, but that makes plenty of sense, and it's very funny. And she's like, Ava's like, this is like the bonding that they have as comedians now. So Ava's like, I think I could play a dead body. And Deborah's like, well, you certainly have the complexion. And they both laugh. And she's like, this is actually pretty triggering for me because I've never learned how to swim. And then Deborah's like, what? So, spoiler alert, just a major theme of the show. Ava's been just barely treading above water in terms of her career and her life, and her as a writer, her as a comedian. Deborah has made it as a comedian, but like I said, with the rower machine next to the pool and the work montage of the previous episodes, Deborah has to work hard too, and she has to tread water. And she's very good at swimming, but she still has to work hard every day and swim every single day. So, Deborah's like, you don't know how to swim? That's ridiculous. And going back to the family dynamics, Ava's like, yeah, no one taught me as a kid. And Ava goes, I thought about taking those swimming classes for adults, but honestly, that's sadder than just drowning. And then the director does the side-by-side of like Deborah on one side and Ava on the other, and they're both laughing so hard. And then it's boom, directed by Desiree. So, of course, their budding relationship continues to grow. So, love this show. Hacks. Thank you so much.